Stephanie with the Rancher's Homestead. Welcome back to the channel. So it is the night before I am going to make a sourdough loaf of bread. And so before I go to bed at night, I always feed my starter. And if you don't know how to start a sourdough starter, I have a blog post out on that, and I'll link that in the description. But I always feed it the night before, because then it gives all night long for it to get nice and bubbly and active and doubled in size, and then tomorrow I'll be ready to bake bread right first thing in the morning. So what you're going to do is you're going to discard all but 40 grams of this starter. And if I'm being completely honest, I do not measure this. I do when I'm starting the starter, but not when I'm feeding. It's about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half is 40 grams. So I just kind of guess how much I'm putting in the jar, which I would say I have about a tablespoon here. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on my scale. Now I'm going to feed it 125 grams of warm water. I am on a well water, so I go ahead and just use it straight from my tap. If you are on city water, you're going to want to use filtered water when you're feeding your starter, because the chlorine in water will affect it. Then I'm going to clear it, and I'm going to add in 140 grams of flour here. Okay, once you have enough flour in, you're just going to mix it up. And these little wooden sourdough spatulas will be on my website soon. They're super handy for making or for feeding sourdough. Okay, so once you have it nice and stirred up, it's kind of thick and sticky, but it does get a little bit runnier as you go on. Then I'm going to go ahead and stick my cap on, and I just let it set here on my counter until I'm ready to make bread. So I will see you back here tomorrow morning, and we're going to get some bread made. Okay, so we are at the next morning, and you can see that my starter has doubled in size. There's lots of air pockets and air bubbles, and so we're ready to make some bread. So I'm going to use my kitchen scale here. Oh, my bowl is sliding off. Set to grams, and you want a big bowl. I mean, it doesn't need to be this big, but you want a pretty big bowl, since you're gonna it's gonna double and it's gonna rise and all of those things. Okay, so you're going to take 125 grams of your starter. Doubling this recipe also is really good. You can make 2 loaves at a time, but since I'm only feeding my husband this, I don't need to do 2 at a time, so I don't usually double it. Okay, so I got a little too much there with that last glob. So I have 125 grams of starter, and it needs to be active. So you know it's active when it's at that peak. When it doubles in size. So that's what's going to give you the greatest rise. Okay, so now I have 125 grams of active starter, and I have cleared my scale here, and I'm going to go ahead and put in 355 grams of warm water. Now, I'm here in Missouri where it's super, super humid. So I actually do a little bit less. The recipe calls for 365 grams of warm water. So if you're in a super dry climate, you may need to add a little bit more water. That's just going to depend on your location. So I'm going to do 355 grams. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it off of my scale here, and I'm going to mix it all together with my hands just until your water becomes milky. And it just looks like a milky solution, and it's mixing the starter all up. Okay, and then I put it back on my scale, cleared it to make sure that it's 0, and now I'm going to add in 500 grams of flour. Again, this makes 1 loaf of bread, so if you want to double it, you would do 1,000 grams of flour. Okay, I'm going to take it off of my scale here, and I'm just going to mix it up with my hands. At this point, your dough is very, very sticky, And it does, I mean, it does come together, but it's very, very sticky. So don't worry, that's exactly the consistency that you want. Just want to make sure all of the flour is mixed into the dough. Okay, once your dough is nice and mixed, kind of scrape it off your fingers as best you can. And you're gonna go ahead and take a plate, cover your bowl. You're gonna let it sit for about 3 to 5 hours. I find that the longer it sits, the better. So I'm just gonna let it sit here on my counter for 3 to 5 hours and I'll meet you back here. Okay, it's been about 5 hours. And here is what your dough is going to look like. So now you're going to want to salt your dough. So I'm gonna measure out 13 grams here of salt. I'm gonna go ahead and uncover this, sprinkle the salt in, and I'm gonna wet my hands here, and I'm gonna pinch the salt into my dough. So I'm just taking a whole hand and pinching it in. Once your salt is mixed into your dough, you are going to go ahead and pull your dough up and stretch, fold it over, turn your bowl. And you're going to do it for about 2 minutes like this. Okay, so once you have done this several times for about 2 minutes or so, I don't really time it exactly, then I'm going to go ahead and stick this plate back on top of it and let it rest for another 3 to 5 hours. Okay, so it's been about 5 hours or so, and this is what your dough is going to look like. Now, I want to talk about the next step real quick. But you're going to need some form of a Bennington basket or a proofing basket. You'll hear them say, I just got these. Actually, these ones are from Ballerina Farms. But you can get them on Amazon, and I'll link in the description another one that I have. And you're going to want to well flour it. And then I just flour a little bit on my counter as well. This is for the next step that you're going to do. So you're going to want to take your dough out of your bowl here and dump it onto your counter. Now you'll see some bubbles when you're doing it in your dough, and that is perfect and exactly what you want. It is just a little bit sticky, but it's much different than before. And when you hold it, I mean, look at how pliable and stretchable it is. So what I'm going to do here is just open it up into a rectangle, and you're going to fold in each side like that, and then you're going to roll it up. And you're going to do a motion where you pull it towards you and push it away from you, and pull it towards you and push it away, back and forth like this, gaining friction in your dough. Once you have your dough all done, you're gonna go ahead and just let it rest here on the counter for 20 minutes undisturbed, and then we're gonna do that motion again. Okay, once your 20 minutes is up, you're gonna be a little bit more gentle with your dough. And put a little bit of flour there. And you're not gonna stretch it out quite as much, but you're gonna go ahead and do the same process again by folding each side in, rolling it up, and sliding back and forth, shaping your dough. You want to create that friction in it. Now you're going to take your dough and you're going to flip it upside down into your basket here that's well floured. And then I just use this shower cap here, and I go ahead and place it on my basket, and I'm gonna stick this in the fridge overnight and we'll bake it in the morning. Okay, so we are at the next morning, and this is how much your bread has rose, and it is nice and ready to bake now. So I went ahead and put my Dutch oven with the lid on into my oven and started my oven for 425. So you want to preheat your oven and your Dutch oven so it's nice and hot when you get your bread in. And I took my bread out of the fridge, and I'm going to go ahead and dump it out here on a piece of parchment paper. And I'm just going to kind of wipe off any extra flour here that's on the top. And now I'm going to take this blade here, and you can use a bread lame or anything, but I just use this nice blade. You could even use a really sharp pointed paring knife. And you're just going to score your bread, and you can do whatever you want. I always try and do one big dash along the side. And this is where you can get really creative. I'm not super creative when it comes to my bread, so I just usually do something simple. I'm really good at making a little flower. It kind of looks like a sunflower, or I do a whole bunch of X's. Sometimes I do little flowers, or like little dashes that kind of look like a long, I don't know, a strand of vine or something. I don't know. I do all different kinds of things, but you're just going to want to score your bread. Once your oven is preheated and your bread is scored, you're going to go ahead and take your lid off and stick it in your Dutch oven, put the lid back on, and bake it for 35 minutes. After the 35 minutes, you're going to go ahead and take the lid off, and then you're going to bake it for another 20 to 25 minutes. You want it to be golden brown, so that it's kind of got that crispy outside, but it's soft and moist on the inside. So as soon as my oven is preheated, I'm going to go ahead and stick my bread inside that. Okay, so my bread went and baked for 35 minutes with the lid on and about 23 minutes with the lid off. Now I'm going to take it out, and I set it here on my wire rack to cool completely. So you don't want to cut your bread until it is completely cooled, otherwise you're going to get some gummy inside. So this is our nice sourdough bread. It's got a nice rise. It's nice and crispy on the outside, soft on the inside. I hope that you learned something about sourdough today, and go make yourself some sourdough bread. It's incredibly healthy for you. It's incredibly good. If you need to start with making a starter, I'll drop that link in the description. If you want to print this recipe, go ahead and jump on over to the blog and put in your email address. You can also print it right off of the blog. I send out 2 new emails a week, sometimes recipes, simple living, ranch life, all of those things. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. I send out 1 new video every single week. I hope this video was helpful for you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.